3 deadly hurricanes in 4 years.
Put my feet on the floor, it was up to my ankle.
You were getting white cap action at about 12 and a half feet. Here you were getting about 10.6 feet inland.
Matthew and Florence brought torrential rain, leaving homes and interstates underwater. Dorian cut off a part of the North Carolina coast from the rest of the world.
This has never happened before. All these houses have been destroyed.
The lessons learned and how they will help us all face a challenge like never before, preparing during a pandemic.
Staying in a shelter will not be a good option.
Tracking the tropics, surviving the season.
With the ongoing threat of the coronavirus and continued efforts to flatten the curve, this hurricane season presents a new challenge for all of us. Hello, and thank you for joining us for Tracking the Tropics, Surviving the Season. I'm Lena Tillett. This season is already shaping up to be a very busy one. We've already passed the record for named storms this early in the season. From socially distancing in shelters to revamping your storm kits, preparing for a natural disaster during a pandemic looks a lot different. This half hour will show you how state emergency leaders plan to balance the challenge of keeping you safe from the storm and coronavirus. There's also a new evacuation system in place. This year, you will hear a lot about knowing your zone. We'll explain what that means for those who own property, live, or vacation in the eastern part of the state. And we take you back to one of the areas hardest hit by Hurricane Florence, still recovering nearly 2 years after its landfall, how this community is moving forward, and why the storyline there is so important for those who think they're safe just because they're inland. Whether you were affected by them or not, storms that hit North Carolina over the past 5 years earn their place in the history books. They should serve as a lesson for all of us as we look forward to a new season. 100 days ago, George Floyd died beneath the knee of a Minneapolis police officer as bystanders looked on in horror. The video shocked the country into action. We've now seen the longest and most widespread protests against police brutality of Black Americans, with millions taking part in demonstrations, virtual town halls, even strikes. America seems to be at a crucial moment. Police departments nationwide and in our area are moving to make reforms. Is it happening quickly enough? And will these reforms work? Tonight, we explore what's been accomplished in 100 days and discuss what equitable policing looks like for our community. This summer was certainly unlike any other we've seen in this country, and tonight we're talking about the facts. What should 21st century policing look like, and how can we keep all members of our community safe? Tonight's roundtable includes insight from Durham Police Chief C.J. Davis, Fayetteville Police Chief Gina Hawkins, Wake County Sheriff Gerald Baker, Hope County Sheriff Hubert Peterkin, social justice activist and filmmaker and North Carolina native Bree Newsom Bass, and former police officer and current criminal law professor at the University of South Carolina, Seth Stoughton, and Special Deputy Attorney General Jasmine McGee. We have a wonderful roundtable. I do want to begin with Chief Davis. About 24 hours ago, Chief, the North Carolina Association of Chiefs of Police released a list of reforms in response to calls for change. And one policy really stood out to me under the headline, Preserve Life in All Use of Force Incidents. It said, quote, use of force training should be comprehensively reformed to incorporate preservation of life in every aspect of use of force. Chief Davis, what does this mean in practice?
Good evening, Lena, and again, thank you so much for the invite tonight.
Go on the record with WRAL News.
The next phase of the pandemic will no longer be a waiting game for the COVID-19 vaccine. The supply will be there, but will the demand? Good evening, and thanks for joining us for On the Record. I'm Lena Tillett. The state's top doctor, Mandy Cohen, says if roughly 70% of the state is vaccinated, we should reach herd immunity and get back to normalcy, not having to wear masks, easing social distancing, freely traveling, and widespread protection from the virus. But this time, the road ahead will take more than science. It will take convincing convincing millions of Americans, including North Carolinians, to get the vaccine. According to High Point University's latest poll on vaccine interest in our state, take a look here. 41% of North Carolina residents said they intended to get the vaccine when the shot is available to them. 13% said they had already been vaccinated. 34% said they did not intend to get the vaccine, and 11% did not know. That's 45% of the state either unsure or not getting the vaccine. So what do we do about that group? In a recent story about vaccine hesitancy in The Atlantic, Derek Thompson writes, quote, I called several doctors and researchers to ask how we could reverse vaccine hesitancy among the groups in which it was highest. They all told me that my initial question was too simplistic. Vaccine hesitancy isn't one thing, they said. It's a constellation of motivations, insecurities, reasonable fears, and less reasonable conspiracy theories. The experts instead gave Thompson 4 categories that I think really more or less sum up the reluctance here: vaccine dissent, deliberation, indifference, and distrust. And I thought that was a good framework for our discussion tonight.
We are back answering your vaccine questions with experts from Duke and UNC.
I want to go back to Dr. Wall. Dr. Wall, one question that we have seen more frequently, and perhaps you have too. Brandy Barfield asks, how long after testing positive for COVID-19 can you get a vaccine?
Sorry, the good news is that there isn't really any restriction for getting the COVID-19 vaccine after COVID-19. The biggest one is just that you're out of isolation, so that there's no risk of infecting anyone when you go out. So once you're cleared, you could get vaccinated. Now, most people who get COVID-19 have natural immunity, so you are probably protected for some time after that. But we think that getting vaccinated is probably a good idea, especially with these new variants circulating.
Dr. Swamy, we've talked with you about this before. You are an OBGYN, as we said at the top of this. Both clearly are still top of mind for young women. Can COVID vaccines cause problems with fertility or getting pregnant?
Right. So on the first question, that's actually a very easy answer. The vaccines have no reason to interfere with a woman or a man's ability to conceive or fertility, or even cause the opposite, or infertility.
Vaccine clinics in Wake County and within the UNC health system will resume Johnson & Johnson doses following a scare we first told you about this time last night at PNC Arena.
Yeah, 18 people reported feeling faint soon after receiving the shot. We have doctors from Duke and UNC standing by to talk more about the cases and the concerns some have expressed. But we want to start with the rising number of North Carolinians who are getting the shot.
If 40% of adults in North Carolina are now partially or fully vaccinated, and as Adam Owens reports, a lot more plan to get the shot.
Despite side effects that could give some people concerns, it seems more and more North Carolinians are still eager to get the vaccine.
I trust the healthcare professionals.
Doug Poteet had no doubts about getting the shot or why he wanted to do it.
So that we can get things back to normal. You know, if we all get vaccinated sooner, the more we can get out and feel safe doing it.
John Rogers also got the vaccine.
It was safer for everyone, even if I wasn't worried about me, really.
Shontaria Johnson waited a while for it.
A month. An entire month.
For a few good reasons.
Because I have a 2-year-old, I have a 98-year-old grandmother, and I work with the public.
According to a recent Elon University poll, most North Carolinians agree with them. While just 33% said yes to the vaccine back in October, that number looks much different now.
And we're at 63% of people who've either been vaccinated already or plan to get the vaccine as soon as possible.
Jason Husser is director of the Elon University poll. He says those willing to take the vaccine say they're doing it to protect their family and return to normal. For those who remain skeptical, a big reason is concern over side effects.
That is still, in our data, the biggest reason why people are hesitant to take the vaccine.
Talk to your doctor if you're concerned, but I had no reservations.
Those who have said no to the vaccine are holding pretty strong on their position. According to the poll, they've stayed at around 20%. Adam Owens, WRAL News.
Joining us tonight to talk about trust in the vaccine and weigh in on the J&J cases, Dr. David Wall from UNC and Dr. Cameron Wolf from Duke.
And Dr. Wall, we have heard from you a lot over the past 24 hours, providing incredible insight into this. We're very grateful for that. And we talked to one of the women who says she had problems at PNC Arena yesterday. Here's what she told our Joe Fisher today.
It was quite frightening. I mean, I had never experienced that kind of dizziness and the black spots in front of my eyes, couldn't really see, couldn't lift my arms.
So, Dr. Wall, if Lori were your patient and expressed the symptoms and concern with the J&J vaccine to you, what would you say to her?
Yeah, I would agree that she has some concerning symptoms, and I'd want to find out more if she's had those kind of symptoms before. Most of the people I've talked to who've had fainting spells or lightheadedness with the vaccine have had that before. And I know there was another interview with another person who was sent to the emergency room from the arena who said something along the lines, if glitter was in the syringe, it doesn't matter what it was, she probably would have had the same reaction.
Dr. Wolf, have you heard from concerned vaccine recipients today after hearing about this? And talk about the general turnout at Duke.
Yeah, I mean, we have. I mean, there's been lots of people, as your article has described, who are certainly interested to understand what's going on here better, as David and I and everyone else have. I think at the end of the day, what people want is they want clear data that says, look, is this common? Is this unanticipated? Or is this part of what we expect for such a large rollout of a vaccine? And I think in keeping, again, with what David had nicely said there, actually the majority of people in our experience who've had reactions to the vaccine so far have been people who had predictably had reactions in the past, and we asked them that, and we understand what that is. You know, I think we would anticipate that people in the last 24 hours want to be a bit more cautious about that. That was to be expected, and we saw that today. And I think that part of that is now our chance to come back and say, look, we've all looked at this data. There's nothing here that's different than what we anticipated. And as we continue to roll this vaccine out, we think the safety is the same as what we anticipated, and that we can continue to want people to come forward and try and get this.
And we're always trying to strike this really delicate balance of reporting what's happening and not creating panic around it as well. How impactful do you think it is for people who are on the fence to hear about bad reactions to the vaccine and potentially their interest in getting it? Dr. Wall.
Yeah, I think it's really important to stress that the reactions we're seeing here are people feeling lightheaded, which is the majority of what we're talking about, and a few who actually fainted. And when you faint at an arena where you're not next to a hospital or clinic, folks get upset and get worried, and they might send you to the emergency room. At our center, and I think for Dr. Wolf, the same sort of thing, it's very unusual for us to send people outside of the clinic to an emergency room or else. So we're talking about lightheadedness. This happens all the time, especially when we vaccinate young people. So when it happens in a clinic, it's not news. When it happens at a mass vaccine event where you have 2,000 people getting vaccinated at the same time and there's 4, 5, 6 cases, it's news. So this is very common, especially younger people. And we are vaccinating younger people now than we did before.
We've seen the same thing as we've moved through our phase to get into students and younger adults. This happens a little bit more common, exactly the same as would happen for flu vaccines, for pneumonia vaccines, for lots of other things. But I think people have to remember that this is a really unique time when we've now vaccinated almost 120 million people in a very short, condensed period of time. We will see these little signals pop up, as David said, because we don't typically need mass vaccination sites. That doesn't mean that the reactions are any more significant or more common, frankly, than before. We need to watch out for them. I mean, it's appropriate that if people think there's a signal that we pause and we relook at our data, and yet having done that, and the CDC and the FDA were involved in checking this actually in the last 24 hours, both came back really reassuring information to say, look, this is what we anticipate. It's not different.
I think the big takeaway, what we've heard from medical professionals, you're more at risk of getting COVID than you are at getting the vaccine. So we hope that people will understand that. Still, we understand the apprehensions, but we appreciate talking to you two to help allay some of the fears.
It's time to go on the record with WRAL News.
Apple's billion-dollar investment in North Carolina. Just 3 years ago, the tech giant did not choose our state for its hub, but patience paid off. State leaders are taking a victory lap.
This campus will represent the future of Apple and the future of our economy.
The footprint of this very large investment will be felt across the state of North Carolina.
It means new jobs, careers for many. It means an influx of people relocating.
Tonight, we go on the record about the biggest deal this state has ever seen. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Lena Tillett. The announcement came early on a Monday morning, April 26th. Apple confirming to WRAL it will build a new campus and engineering hub in Research Triangle Park. And then we learned the deal. A $1 billion facility creating 3,000 jobs and high-paying jobs, on average more than $180,000 a year. Plus, a commitment to invest $100 million for schools and community programs and another $100 million for infrastructure. Here's where the facility will be built, off Davis Drive in 540. It's a sprawling piece of land purchased by the company in 2018. And while the company decided to go with Austin, Texas that year, state leaders always had hope the wealthiest company in the world would be back. Tonight, you will get rare insight from some of the people most responsible for landing this deal. Matt Calabria is the Wake County Commissioner. Tony Copeland is the former State Commerce Secretary. Ashley Cagle is the Assistant Executive Director for Wake County Economic Development. And Jim Blaine is the former Chief of Staff to Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger. Thank you all for joining me. Really looking forward to this discussion. So, Mr. Blaine, I'll begin with you because I understand you were involved in the very first discussions with Apple back in 2018. Take us through those early conversations and tell us what goes into having to court the most valuable company in the world.
The wins.
There's a new dean in college basketball.
903 as a college head coach. 3 national championships as head coach of his alma mater.
The
wit.
We don't beat freaking Oregon. We're out there in Uber trying to get our butts back to Chapel Hill. I'm going to get old one of these daggum days. What my philosophy is the same daggum philosophy I had 29 years.
The impact.
Any player, they not only love him, they revere him, not just for his coaching ability, but for the way he treats them as people.
The farewell.
I came in and I saw the former players in the lounge. That was really different. And when I realized that I was going to walk through that tunnel for the last time as a coach, that was really difficult.
Roy Williams retires after 33 years as a college head coach.
An emotional day for Roy Williams today. He appeared, as you can see, in that beautiful Carolina blue sports jacket on the court bearing his name, announcing his retirement today from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The Hall of Famer spoke for roughly an hour about how his career in Carolina blue has had such an impact on his life and so many others. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm David Crabtree.
And I'm Deborah Morgan. 18 seasons as a head coach in Chapel Hill, 33 overall, 3 national championships for UNC, and an impact far greater than basketball. Coach Williams says it's time.
But the biggest reason we're having this meeting is I just don't feel that I'm the right man any longer. I love coaching, working with kids on the court, the locker room, the trips, the jump around music, the trying to build a team. I will always love that, and I'm scared to death of the next phase.
This has been a difficult, heartbreaking time for the arts. Like every part of society, we've closed venues, lost artists and patrons to COVID-19. But our focus remains service, solace, and hope through the arts. We're using our creativity to serve families who turn to music, to poetry, to dance for solace. And we need the arts more than ever for hope. Hope to heal, to build empathy for one another, and to help with the economic recovery of our communities. Arts, culture, and creativity have always survived, even through the darkest moments in our history, because they're so fundamental to who we are. Tonight, we celebrate the arts, the artists, and the arts audiences of the area. Tonight, with your help, the arts will not only survive, but will once again thrive throughout the Triangle. This is Big Night In for the Arts.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for a special hour-long TV event honoring arts in the Triangle.
Tonight, we're going to hear from several local artists: Ariana DeBose, Mandolin Orange, Branford Marcellus, Mike Wiley, and Scotty McCreery.
And we hope these performances will inspire you to give back and help shine the light back on the talent in our community.